Hello, Philosophy 353, and welcome to week four, Introduction to Islam. Let's go ahead and jump right in for time's sake to make sure we are keeping these lectures short as promised. Okay, so in week four, as usual, make sure that we're watching these lectures, which you obviously are. If you are here right now watching this lecture, just another emphasis, I keep these short, but I do want you to understand the purpose of these. I'm trying to just give you a brief overview for you to wrap your mind around. What are you doing this week? What do you need to plan for? What is the topic, and exposing you to that topic so you can go then, by giving you that skeleton, you can go in and tie in and place all the meat onto that to make sure that you're learning this material at a very, very deep level. So just want to emphasize that. Okay, for the reading this week, Farhadian, part 9, Islam. So if you have the book, you can just go to part 9 and read the entire section of Islam. And if you have the online, same thing. We don't have to worry about the page numbers there. And the good news is that's the only reading for this week. Okay, so that should free you up a little bit because you do have, it's a little bit work heavy this week. The video, again, only one video this week, Islam, Empire of Faith. This is a long documentary. As soon as you click on it, you will see that. But it is the only video for this week. So that you'll be able just to focus in on just the one video that we have assigned for you this week. But do make sure that you take the time if you have to chunk it up and work through the entire thing, because it is very well put together. And that's why I gave only that one video this week. Next, you'll need to finish working on your service attendance number 2. You were looking at either Jewish or an Islamic tradition service. Okay, so it's either or. You're choosing one of those. I do want to emphasize again, if you can make it in person, that is always ideal. But thankfully, we do have the technology. And if you are going to do it online, please make sure it's one that you're attending live. Okay, because I want you to get as much of that experience as you can. And I want to also emphasize here that you use the template. Best thing to do is to just plug it into that template. That way the headings are there and it breaks it up the way that the assignment needs to be broken up. That's the easiest way of doing it. Okay. Your book review. Do not keep pushing this off. If you haven't started that, it is time to start. You can see in week 6 the books that are available there. So make sure if you haven't yet chosen a book for it, that you've done that and you're starting to work your way through it, because that'll sneak up on you. We're already in week 4. Week 6 will come up, and then you'll need to be working through an entire book that week. So let's try avoiding that. And then also your quarterly exam number 2, that's going to cover materials from last week on Judaism, and also materials this week: open book, open note, not open friend, not open internet. Hopefully learning from the last exam, you kind of have an idea of what's going to be expected there. So do review your notes, review the material, make sure you know where material is in the readings, and you can navigate it and you have a good understanding of it. That's going to help you out on that exam. Okay. Next, as we go to a brief overview here of Islam, we see that Islam is a major world religion, just like Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. These are kind of seen as the 3 major ones. But it was first promoted by the Prophet Muhammad in Arabia in the 7th century. Okay, this term Islam, this Arabic term Islam, literally translates as surrender or full and complete surrender. And it accepts full and complete surrender to the will of Allah. Allah is seen as the one and only God, and that is the term that they would use. They do see a connection, a continuity between the God of the Old Testament, primarily the Torah, the first 5 books. But as that develops into what is known as the Quran, which we'll look at, this goes into a totally different teaching than we find in the Old Testament, of that of obviously Christianity, but of Judaism as well. So the will of Allah is made known through the sacred scriptures. Now, again, there's connections to the Old Testament, to the Torah, but the Quran, often spelled with a K in English, is where Allah reveals his message to the greatest of the prophets in their view, which is Muhammad. In Islam, Muhammad is considered the last of the prophets. So Adam was considered a prophet, Noah, Abraham, Moses, Solomon, but even Jesus was seen as a prophet. They would even take an acceptance of Jesus. They would see Jesus as one of the larger prophets, but Jesus definitely is not seen as the Messiah, as the end all. In many ways, Muhammad was seen that way. So, with Muhammad's message, his message completes the quote revelations of all the earlier prophets. So, Muhammad is seen as the greatest of the prophets, where in Christianity, Christ is obviously that and so much more. Jesus is just seen as a prophet in the progression of prophets in their view. So the religion through Muhammad is first taught to a rather small group of followers, but then rapidly spreads throughout the Middle East, again in that 7th century. And it spreads to Africa, into Europe, to the Indian subcontinent, to the Malay Peninsula, and even into China. By by the early 21st century, there was more than 1.5 billion Muslims worldwide, and today we know it is one of the top 3 major religions in the world today. Many sects have arisen within Islam. However, most Muslims are bound by a common faith and a sense of belonging to a single community of faith. There have been extremist groups that have come out of Islam. Most of those who are Muslim do reject this form, but we do need to make note that there has been extremist groups that have come about and taken what is really in the opinion of a Muslim, a peaceful faith, and made it into a very, very violent one. Some of the beliefs and sacred texts that they use, obviously the Quran is the central text. It is their holy book. It is their authority. In it, it teaches that God is one and unique. He has no partner. He has no equal. There's a massive emphasis on the oneness, the holiness, the person of God, and they staunchly oppose the idea of the Trinity. Very, very much opposed the idea that it is shared. Jesus was only one of the prophets, Muhammad being even greater than him, and there is no room for an idea of the Trinity. Very, very much rejected. The Quran lays frequent stress on the design and order of the universe. Allah is the one who is in complete control, in complete guidance. Everything that happens is under Allah, and Allah needs to be worshipped to that fact. And mankind is seen as very frail and forgetful and in need of continual reminding to counteract the continual deceit of Satan. And that's why they take such a strong emphasis on making that a proclamation of Allah and His goodness because of our inability and our frailness and our forgetfulness. And so they are very, very devout. Most Muslims are very devout in their readings and in their prayers. And it's one of the things, to be quite honest, as Christians, like, we would agree with the idea that Satan is very much deceived. But it is in Christ. Christ has given us the ability to see through this. Christ has rescued us. Everything hinges on Christ in our faith, where Christ is really almost kind of a side note in Islam, where Muhammad is the one who is exalted, but all of those are pushed aside, and it's simply that emphasis on who they believe God to be, which again is that term Allah. The worship of Islam, 5 pillars are going to be central. You're going to read about that. It includes things like their pilgrimage and prayer. You're going to read about that more this week, but the 5 pillars are very, very central. Kind of like last week in Judaism, right? Those 13 teachings. Those are kind of like the things that hymn it all together. That's kind of how the 5 pillars will function in Islam. Holy days are very, very big. They take those very, very seriously, and there are ones that go throughout the year. The mosque is going to be the place of worship, of where people of the Islam faith would go to worship. It would be kind of our comparison of church, though there is similarities. There's also major differences, which you will read about. The annual pilgrimage to Mecca is one of the biggest, kind of like the high holy days that people in Islam will partake in. It's kind of the thing that they really see as like the ultimate thing to do in worshiping in your faith, to go to Mecca and to worship in the way that is outlined. And this is also seen as one of their pillars. The pilgrimage to Mecca is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. They also have several shrines of saints that have went before them. We would use those, I think, and maybe consider those icons But those are very central to the worship that they engage in. And you will see that a lot if you visit a mosque. You will certainly come across several shrines and pictures and things to remember those who have gone before them. So lots to learn about this week. That is just a very quick overview to kind of set the stage of what you're going to look at this week. Take your time going through that reading. It is interesting. We want to continue to look at this through that Christian lens. You can kind of see Judaism has failed to see Christ as the Messiah, and in many ways, Islam has too. Christ is recognized even more so. You could say that Christ is recognized more so than even Judaism is, but recognized in a way of just he was a good teacher, he was one of the prophets, but nonetheless, a rejection of Christ for who he is a rejection of Christ for who he is. And it leads us away from the central teachings of the Christian faith and ultimately of the Bible in totality. So continue to work hard at these things. I pray for you that this would help you in your understanding of your own faith and strengthen your faith. I know that when I look at these things, it does that for me, for sure. And as always, if you have any questions, please let me know. If not, I will see all of you soon. Week 4, halfway through the course. Keep working hard.